Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining me. How are you? Have a good day, everyone, and God bless you. Alright, now we will come to today's news. FBI whistleblower resigns from the Bureau and warns Congress about dangers of case quota system. An FBI whistleblower has divulged to Congress that the Bureau has created a case quota system that can incentivize agents to pursue frivolous cases or delay action on real crimes to attain statistical goals. Steve Friend, a special agent and former SWAT team member who blew the whistle on alleged civil liberties violations in certain investigations. He resigned from the Bureau this week and gave the House Judiciary Committee an extensive interview detailing his concerns about the politics of criminal cases and the growing manipulation of investigations to attain statistical and budget goals. Friend said he made the decision to leave the Bureau after he had been denied a paycheck for 150 straight days as his security clearance was placed under review after he made a protected whistleblower disclosure. The denial of pay, he said, came though he was never accused formally of any wrongdoing or subjected to any formal disciplinary action. Instead, he has accepted a job at a nonprofit that will be conducting investigations of the FBI. Quote, "I just had to take that opportunity and, continue my efforts to reform the FBI from the outside." He said. Friends that he spent significant time describing how the Bureau's case management system has essentially created a quota system for the crimes the FBI most wants to investigate. The Bureau's integrated program management system, quote, essentially involves the FBI setting metrics for itself, setting a quota and pressuring its workforce to meet that quota, he alleged. The danger, he said, is that agents might feel compelled to open a case on flimsy evidence simply to meet a data goal. Other times, he said, agents have been asked to delay opening the case to push the statistical reporting ahead into a new fiscal year. Quote, "Another aspect of this that I think is worth noting is even if crimes are righteous and worthy of being investigated, the quota system incentivizes you to change your tempo of your investigation," he explained. He continues, quote, "I had a personal experience where I was told to delay indictments of subjects because we'd already met our quota for the year. We wanted those numbers to count for the next fiscal year. In my experience, certainly within the ranks of the management in the leadership structure, the FBI tends to be a lot more politically left-leaning," he said. FEMA to deploy federal services to Ohio. The Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA, will deploy federal services to Ohio 2 weeks after the train disaster. Governor Mike DeWine announced this weekend, quote, "Following further discussions with FEMA tonight, they will be deploying federal resources to East Palestine." The Ohio governor said, quote, "FEMA and the state of Ohio have been in constant contact regarding emergency operations in the area," read a joint statement from Governor DeWine and FEMA Regional Administrator Thomas E. Civic that was released on Friday. It continues, quote, "US EPA and Ohio EPA have been working together since day one. FEMA will supplement federal efforts by deploying a senior response official along with a regional incident management assistance team, or IMAT, to support ongoing operations, including coordination and ongoing assessments of potential long-term recovery needs." And a statement released before it was announced that FEMA will be deployed. The Ohio governor's office said it had been in daily contact with FEMA to discuss the need for federal support. But that female quotes continues to tell Governor DeWine that Ohio is not eligible for assistance at this time. Governor DeWine, his press secretary Dan Tierney, said on Thursday that the situation East Palestine was considered ineligible for a FEMA disaster declaration. Because while a train derailment is clearly a disaster, it technically did not involve destruction of property. Quote, "We are ineligible for a FEMA disaster declaration. We've been told by FEMA that we will not meet the qualifications at this time." He continues, quote, "And the reason for that is that FEMA disaster declarations are related to property damage, and solely property damage." In addition to Friday's announcement that FEMA will now be deployed to Ohio, one's office also revealed that Ohio is setting up a medical clinic in the town this upcoming week, quote, "to engage with residents, answer questions, evaluate any symptoms, and provide medical expertise." The governor's office said that in response to request from DeWine, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services will be sending federal officials to the area to support the clinic. The announcement of FEMA being deployed to East Palestine arrives on the heels of it being revealed that Donald Trump plans to visit the small Ohio town next week. House Republicans launch probe into Biden's then heavily Afghanistan withdrawal. Top House Oversight Committee Republicans on Friday demanded all documents and communications from the Biden administration, including the Joint Chiefs of Staff regarding Joe Biden's deadly Afghanistan withdrawal in 2021. The Republicans are demanding the information after the Biden administration has, quote, obstructed congressional oversight, along with the Special Inspector General for Afghanistan Reconstruction. According to the House Oversight Committee Chair James Comer, quote, the Biden administration was tragically unprepared for the Afghanistan withdrawal, and their decisions in the region directly resulted in a national security and humanitarian catastrophe. Comer said in his statement. He continues, quote, U.S. servicemen and women lost their lives. Americans were abandoned taxpayer dollars or unaccounted for, and the Taliban gained access to military equipment. Progress for Afghan women was derailed, and the entire area is now under hostile Taliban control. The American people deserve answers, and the Biden administration's ongoing obstruction of the investigation is unacceptable. He concluded the agency's commerce seeks to collect information from the senior leadership at the White House, U.S. Department of Defense, U.S. Department of State's, U.S. Department of Homeland Security, U.S. Agency for International Development, and the Joint Chiefs of Staff. The letter to DoD Secretary Austin and Joint Chiefs of Staff Chairman Milley reads in part, quote, you were at the center of planning the withdrawal and evacuation and advised Biden on decisions that amounted to tactical and strategic failures. Comer noted that the Biden administration failed to respond to congressional oversight 3 times, spending over 2 years despite 13 troops dying upon withdrawal. The then Democrat-led House Oversight Committee never held a public hearing on the deadly withdrawal after, quote, more than $2 trillion spent on the war and reconstruction efforts in the nation. 24 states sue Biden's EPA over water rule that would limit land use for farmers. Attorneys general and 24 states filed a lawsuit against the Biden administration's Environmental Protection Agency on Thursday over a new water rule that would limit farmers' and landowners' ability to make use of their own land. The suit accused the EPA and the United States Army Corps of Engineers of, quote, pushing the states aside and seizing control over the nation's water management. The Biden administration's Waters of the United States or WOTUS rule, which was introduced in December and is scheduled to be implemented in March, would reinterpret what waterways in the country are federally protected and therefore subject to regulation under the 1972 Clean Water Act. Quote, the agencies have sought to expand their own authority by broadly defining waters of the United States, a key jurisdictional provision in the CWA, the lawsuit stated. The suit explained that the definition of waters of the United States is used to determine the scope of navigable waters, which the EPA, as new rules, seeks to redefine to include ponds, certain streams. Quote, if WOTUS is defined more broadly, then more waters and land are subject to rigorous federal permitting requirements, potential criminal penalties for discharges, and much more. The lawsuit claimed the states accused the agencies of attempting to redefine WOTUS in, quote, an unlawfully aggressive way that violates constitutional rights for ambiguous environmental benefits. The lawsuit explained that if the rule was left in place, quote, ranchers, farmers, miners, home builders, and other landowners across the country will struggle to undertake even the simplest of activities on their own property without fear of drawing the ire of the federal government. The 24 states taking legal action against the agencies include West Virginia, North Dakota, Georgia, Iowa, Alabama, Alaska, Arkansas, Florida, Indiana, Kansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Missouri, Montana, Nebraska, New Hampshire, Ohio, Oklahoma, South Carolina, South Dakota, Tennessee, Utah, Virginia, and Wyoming. The states requested that the court intervene and prevent, quote, the improper federal grab over state waters by setting the rule aside as unlawful. West Virginia Attorney General Patrick Morrisey urged the Supreme Court to clearly define WOTUS to ensure state waters, quote, are not subject to the whims of unelected bureaucrats. And then Newsweek, Obama, Democrats don't want Biden to run in 24. This is a Newsweek article. Okay. This is a Newsweek article. There are other articles talking about Biden and Obama having a tumultuous or troubled relationship. The reason that former President Obama does not want Biden to run is because of the classified data scandal. It's not good for Obama's legacy. President Obama has a foreign policy, economic policy, domestic policy legacy that Biden is now tarnishing. Okay. The classified records that are in the University of Delaware that have been, perhaps according to the New York Post, because there are New York Post articles talking about Hunter's emails. And Ted Cruz has been talking about this in Congress and in James Kamara and Jim Jordan. Part of the emails that Hunter and Joe and everyone around them sent to business associates or billionaires' corporations around the world to acquire money had repackaged, summarized, reformulated classified data notes. So it was like a Cliff Notes version of classified data, according to the New York Post and Ted Cruz. So you have Ted Cruz here, we can look it up. Ted Cruz talking about, hey, yeah, Hunter didn't write that himself. So Cruz suggests FBI search Hunter's home for classified documents. This is The Hill. There are other articles talking about Ted Cruz saying, hey, wait a second. Hunter Biden didn't write those things. He had to have obtained that classified information from Joe. So that's just one example. Then you have potential knowledge of any criminal behavior. Oh, a private server, or maybe Hillary's private server. I think Hillary Clinton will be the 24 nominee for the Democrats. Obviously, former President Trump will be 24th nominee for the Republican Party. I'm just laughing because I'm like, yeah, well, obviously not gonna be the 24 nominee for the Republican Party. Although if you had never Trumpers decide the nomination, maybe. But Hillary could actually become president. If you have Arizona and Georgia, Republican Party has turned their back on Trump, and I think that if he can forge some kind of union or détente or agreement or peace deal, or olive branch, if Trump can form some kind of alliance with the never Trump heirs, it's at the state level in Arizona and Georgia. He's unstoppable. He would be unstoppable, but never Trump Republicans revere media coverage. They think if they could just be a good Republican, then media will be nice. But media has a template, a rubric, a roadmap, a game plan regarding Trump now. You will never have one of those reports on Paul Ryan lifting weights. Okay, like they had in 2012, everything will be apoplectic, hysterical, sensationalized. Oh my God, and Republican wants to devour the universe in this next Republican as even worse than Trump, makes Trump look like a Democrat. Oh my God. So the game plan is make anyone who's a threat to the Democratic Party as a monster and authoritarian, somebody who will devour the entire planet. Goodness, democracy, decency. Okay, so all the apoplectic and hysterical coverage of Trump is not because Trump is like this evil madman. It's because his economic policies worked and his foreign policy worked. He was a very good president. That's what I got for you guys. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to leave a like and possibly subscribe to the channel. If you're up for it, I'm gonna get back to work. Thanks for watching, and I will